Host Melissa Rosenblum is one of only a few women certified by the Supreme Court of New Jersey as a criminal trial attorney. When you add kids, a booming law business, and a little black book full of subject matter experts, you've got the Mighty Merp podcast. Part 2 in this series.
That time I was searching around for how am I going to get close to 1,000 people employed. And a very good friend of mine, Joe Gingoli, was one of the principals at the Hard Rock Casino, which was opening up at this time. It had been closed for about a year. Hard Rock had purchased it. Joe was interested in it. He was also a contractor, general contractor of the renovations. I said, I would love to be able to get a bunch of my people, all of whom professed they wanted to work in the casinos. And he went and checked with the Hard Rock people, and they said that, it was a great cause, and they were all in favor of it, but it would be very hard for them to take a massive amount, hundreds of people from drug court. They did not want to be known as, quote unquote, a drug court casino. I understood it.
Was there an issue also, am I wrong on this, about licensing or working
at? There was a huge licensing problem.
Mm-hmm.
But so what we did was as follows. In talking more to Joe, I said, look, if we change the name, and I don't know if it was Joe to me or me to Joe, and what can we change it to? What can we change it to? Well, what if we called it Recovery Court? And now, I did not have any authorization to call it Recovery Court at all.
Just so I'm clear, the program...
Yeah.
The statute, the program before that, I don't know how long the program was in place, was just always called throughout the state of New Jersey drug court.
Drug court, yes, since 2005 when the drug court statute began, when the drug court regime began, it has always been called drug court. So, so we found out from Hard Rock, the Recovery Court would work. It's a very hopeful sounding thing. They'd like to cooperate. I met with the Casino Association together with Judge Mendez, who was the assignment judge at the time, and we found there was a lot of interest in dealing with Recovery Court, whereas there had not been much interest in dealing with drug court. So what's in the name? As I always say, there's a hell of a lot in the name. So then we had to get permission to call ourselves Recovery Court. So we went and saw to a meeting with the Chief Justice and the Administrative Director of the courts, Glenn Grant.
When you went to the meeting, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but when you went to the meeting, how confident were you about the likelihood of success going in, and then how confident going out?
I was extremely unconfident of success going in, and coming out, I thought I had a 50-50 shot because Judge Grant seemed to like the idea, and the Chief Justice, Stuart Rabner, seemed to like the idea. They were concerned about any legal hurdles that they would have to undertake in order to change the name of the court in 2 counties, which is what I was proposing, not the entire state, just Atlantic Cape May. Mm-hmm. And we looked at the statute. The statute, as you well know, is entitled Special Probation.
Mm-hmm. It
does not mention the word drug court in it. So therefore, people had been calling it drug court just because that was what it was called. And frankly, there's a drug court movement in all 49 other states, and they're all called, to the best of my knowledge, drug court. Although I went to a recent seminar, they had a criminal judges seminar at Seaview about last week, and I met the Chief Justice of the state of New Hampshire, who was speaking before the drug court judges, the Recovery Court judges, and in fact, they're changing the name in New Hampshire to Recovery Court. So, maybe it'll be a movement. Who knows? And I didn't do it for that. But ultimately, they allowed me to call it Recovery Court. I did call it Recovery Court. The people felt great. They could tell their kids, where are you going today, Dad? I'm going to Recovery Court, not drug court.
Mm-hmm.
Where you going, Mom? I'm going to Recovery Court. It had a lot of symbolic differences, and our outcomes got better and better and better. Was it because it was called Recovery Court? Probably not so much, but I think definitely the fact that we got over 500 people employed by various casinos in Atlantic City, that made a big difference. People who have a job do not want to lose that job. People are proud of themselves. They feel fulfilled. They don't feel insecure. They don't have to be out at 3 o'clock in the morning on the streets, risking
mm-hmm.
getting shot in the head by psychopaths. It just seemed to work. I wanted to make one other comment, which is a very interesting one because you will remember this.
Well, I was going to ask you an interesting question. I think we're going to go down the same line, but go ahead, and then you're going to have
my comment was on who would you think was harder to get more people pled into recovery court, the prosecutors or the defense lawyers?
Okay, so my question was going to be, who was the hardest group of players, whether it was prosecutors, defense attorneys, probation officers, court staff, to buy into your new philosophy of pleading even drug sellers into drug court, not sending them to state prison, and really focusing on the recovery aspect of the program? I was going to ask, and I think the answer is going to be the same. Who was the hardest?
You absolutely know the answer, because your group was the most difficult group. I mean, the prosecutors, I went to see the prosecutor at the time. They got it. The prosecutor in Cape May got it. The assistant prosecutors were no problem whatsoever, because they totally understood and had been working in this system where they're incarcerated, having all these people incarcerated for whom incarcerated did no good. And how do you know that it did no good? Because as soon as they were out of jail, the most common sentence in a drug distribution, possession with intent to distribute in that case was 3 years New Jersey State Prison. It meant you went to 3 years New Jersey State Prison. You either got out on what's called ISP, intensive supervised probation, or if you served, or you got out on parole after 9 months. Of ISP is 3 or 4 months, or parole is 9 months. As long as you don't shoot anybody in jail, you'll get out in 9 months, and then they'd be back on the streets. They'd be getting high on the way back from a state prison on the way back, and then they'd be right back in the Superior Court. So the prosecutors bought it. The people who did not buy it were the criminal defense lawyers.
Okay, and
now,
so why do you think? I know the answer. I'm a criminal defense attorney. You know this, but my whole career, 25 years, either a public defender or in private practice. And so you're saying the private criminal defense attorneys, because were the public defenders pushing against it too, or was it just the private bar?
No, I don't mean to. Yeah, I'm not isolating the private bar, the public defenders, and the private bar, the criminal defense bar, were unified in not seeing the light, at least initially. And the reason why was, and I remember talking to one specific individual who you know well, and who said to me, "Judge, we have an obligation to our clients that if there's a motion to suppress that I can make, or if I can try and put a hole in the search warrant that was utilized, or if I can challenge it in some way, I have an obligation to do it. So I'm not going to plead guilty until I exhaust all those mechanisms."
Correct.
The problem is that in exhausting all those mechanisms would take 9 months to a year, at which time the client, who was either in jail, but probably more likely out of jail, was still using and still committing other crimes and getting himself or herself into bigger and bigger problems.
Correct.
So I said to them,
yes.
And you remember me saying this.
I know, I was there for all of this.
I said, give your clients a break. As long as they are addicted or they have a substance abuse issue, they will not stop using and selling drugs and committing crimes in order to get the wherewithal to buy drugs until they are in recovery. And the only way they're going to get into recovery, now could they go themselves to any one of the hundreds of rehabs that exist? Sure they could. Were they going to? No. The only way they were going to go is if they were compelled to go by some probationary program, and that's what recovery court is.
Absolutely.
So, at first, I got a lot of pushback. I got a lot of pushback from you, if you recall. I got a lot of pushback from and you were not alone. I don't mean to say you know.
No, that's okay. I think the other issue, which is not necessarily always trying to exhaust all the legal and constitutional issues, but really is that, we are subject to being advocates for our clients, and not all of them. There used to be a huge negative thought process about that program when it was called Drug Court. It was a long program, and many clients didn't want to participate in it because they felt like it was just a trap of being sent to prison in the future. So
nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to get into recovery. No person who has a substance abuse problem, let them say, I did shorten up the program. I made it far less punitive, but nobody wanted to stop. The only way they will stop, and look, are there people out there who are extraordinary human beings who will say, I'm not going to use drugs anymore and be able to not use drugs anymore? I am sure they exist. And people may listen and say, hey, that's not the way it happened to me. I just said I've had enough and I quit. How many times have you heard in court, or have I heard in court, Judge, I'm done. I'm done. I am done. I can't take this anymore. And then a week later, they'd be back.
Correct.
It is a disease. It is a disease.
Yes.
These are not bad people. It is not a moral failing. It is someone who has a disease for whom that we had used to and probably still do send to jail for having a disease. So, but my argument was that if your obligation is to your client, think about what the obligation of your client is to give them a better life. It has not. If you beat, let's assume there's a motion to suppress, a bad search, and they found this drug. So what? Because at the end of the day, they're going to get caught tomorrow doing the same damn thing, and it'll be a clean earth search.
Right. It's a revolving door for our clients. Listen, I can tell you, even in the last few years, and doing this, that there is nothing worse than seeing clients, relapse. And I've had several clients in the last few years that have overdosed and died. And it is heartbreaking as you watch them struggle and try to get clean.
Look, I saw you change. You changed. You became an advocate for the program. You, in many cases, fought to get your clients in the program, which you would have never done at the very beginning of the process. You would have rather taken it to court and tried the case and win, and then
of course won.
Win the case.
You have to remember that I would win.
Yeah, but if you win, you didn't win.
Correct.
That was my argument. If you win, you lose. Because if you win, they go out and they're doing the same damn thing all over again. Next time they may kill themselves or somebody else.
Correct.
So that's the problem. Everybody had to have a different mindset about what it is to represent a client who has a substance abuse problem. And the reality of it is, I don't know if there's been any surveys, and I'm sure there has, of how many people in the criminal justice system commit crimes because of drugs. Now, that would be not only possession with intent, not only distribution, but most breaking and entering, shoplifting, robberies, and then we get to the DV crimes, attempted murders and murders. In my experience, which is not an insubstantial amount of experience, a majority of crimes are committed by people who are addicted to alcohol or drugs, and those crimes are directly related to that substance abuse. And so we have to look at it differently. Now, people get angry. People say, well, why should we treat somebody who's a substance abuse problem different than somebody who commits a crime doesn't have a substance abuse problem? I don't think we should treat them differently, but the only way unless you're going to send somebody to jail for their entire life, which we are not. We couldn't afford to do it as a society. It's stupid and unjust to do in any event.
Inhumane.
It's inhumane. It's the whole nine yards, and we're just not going to do it. They're going to be back one day, and the only way to get people back and not using drugs. I mean, how many times have I heard the story that my brother, my sister, my friends came to pick me up from prison, and we all got high in the car. I mean, I heard that story a million times. So the only way you're going to really help your clients is through recovery. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult road to walk, but I have seen many people succeed. And frankly, I've seen many people not succeed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. There is more to come. Mighty Merp is a production of the Law Office of Melissa Rosenblum and the Niche Podcast Network. Mighty Merp is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite apps and players. But the best way to experience the show is to visit mightymerp.com, where you can subscribe, rate, or submit a voice message to the show. That's mightymerp.com.